I mean, let's face it, the value you put in a weatherman is based on where you live. Either you need weather people or you don't. I'm a meteorologist. It's been a long week, I'll tell you that. We've had a lot of weather come through, and people don't really realize what a meteorologist does, how their sleep patterns go, or any of that. It's a lot of nerds trying to be pretty and talk about things in a way that you can understand them. So that's for starters. Now, why has it been such a long week? Well, not only with the weather, but when we got on the backside of the weather, we ran into a constituency problem where the entire population apparently is somehow blaming us as meteorologists as to what happened with the storm. So it's a public backlash, and my fellow meteorologists have been all over Facebook. You see them basically everywhere saying, yo, you need to back down and stop shooting the messenger. We're catching a ton of heat as meteorologists, and it's not really a weather problem. Let's not get confused. It's a people problem. Why do I care about the topic? One, because I am one. I've lived in that booth. I've worked those 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning till 7 in the morning shifts, and I've worked on weather nonstop to keep people informed. When you get on the backside of it, you get surface noise. You get the, nothing really happened here. You hyped it all week and nothing happened here. You broke into the game. Those are the playoffs, and nothing happened here. You got it wrong. Bruh, if I had a nickel for every time somebody whined to me about a forecast that wasn't correct for where they were standing, I'd have a lot of money right now. It's an interesting science, is weather, and I think it's interesting how little we understand about it as the public, and about how little you understand as the public what the forecast means, what you're getting, and how it relates to you specifically. You don't know in most cases, so therefore there's a blanket, we're wrong. The other thing that we get is you hear what you want to hear. You take from it the results of your past experiences, determine what you hear when I say something. I'm in strategic communications. I'm working on a master's degree right this very minute. So my interest in this topic is now twofold, because one, as a guy who's been doing weather for a really, really long time, I want to know, is the communication error between us and the public, is it just words? Because if that's the case, that's easily fixable. But what I've come to realize over this decade plus of doing this, I've come to realize that you come into the conversation with your own baggage. So you hear things in ways that I don't intend them. For instance, let's go to the old adage, is the glass half full or half empty? Well, depends on who's looking at it, right? Well, that's kind of where we're at. So what we have is a lot of people complaining right now, and that's really symptoms and not the disease. So that's why I'm kind of going through it. And as a student of communication right now, it just ties in perfectly for me to figure out, how do we fix it? You bring into a conversation your own baggage, whether you're talking about weather or anything else, right? That's basic communications. That's how it works. So again, half empty, half full. Mentally, and I'm the same, but let me tell you, I'm exactly the same. If it didn't happen at my house, it did not happen. Therefore, why did you break into the game? It's hilarious when I used to have this same conversation when I worked in television. I'm in the middle of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I've got a manager that's super zealous about, and rightfully so, about getting information out. That's very important. Now, when we get through a situation where through the metro, we've had the last 2 to 6 hours very weather aware, and people are completely hyped out right now. They're done. They need a nap because it's gone. Then there's just one little sliver of the county that's still holding on to some pretty strong weather. But if you know the geography of the area, that's over a mountain range. No one lives there. So the reality is we should calm this down a little bit. stop being drama queens and let people get back to what they need, which is relaxation. They need to dial it back a little bit, watch something on TV, which is why we are a part of a network. Let's not forget, we're not just an independent news station. In most cases, we belong or we align ourselves with ABC, NBC, CBS, or Fox, right? So there's something that should be on the network likely at that time when we're covering severe weather that potentially a lot of people tuned in to miss. My mother asked me about doing the forecast for that storm system that just went through, right? I think they call it Fern. She said, hey, do this forecast for me, because she lives in a neighborhood full of older folks that aren't really into a bunch of ice conversation. And I'm talking about the frozen kind, not the other kind at this point. And you never know, so I wanted to clarify. So all these people are working off of this forecast that I give. And I was telling my mom, listen, here's what's happening with this particular storm. Where you sit geographically, there is a warm nose that's pushing and is keeping a lot of warm air in place. Models are not dealing with that effectively, I think. I think what's going to happen, we have a lot of sleet and or freezing rain. Freezing rain was kind of the first talk, obviously. And with that being in the forecast, I think that that's going to come, but almost immediately where you're sitting and where the freeze line is, a lot of weather talk, it's going to rise north of you, and where you're at, that's going to create warm flow because you're getting Gulf moisture coming in, which should calm your snow chances and your ice chances down and make it more of a rain event. Okay. Now, when she explained that to another lady in her neighborhood, she said exactly what I said. And why do I know that? Because I sent it to her on a text, and she was letting her friends read it. And her friend said, okay, so we're getting no ice. That's not what I said. I didn't say that. I said at the very beginning, it's likely going to be freezing rain or sleet, and then pretty quickly the temperature is going to change. That's what I said. She heard glass full, we're fine. Reality, that's what happened. They didn't get hardly any ice. They had a little bit of freezing rain. The other thing was, if it's not in my house, it's not happening. I was talking to my mother, and I told her I thought that would get there somewhere around between 3 and 5 her time. She's talking to me on the phone, and she said this exactly to me. She said, well, nothing's happened. Nothing's happened. It's 6 o'clock. Nothing's happened. And I said, that's interesting. So I went online and I pulled up the radar. And when I pulled up the radar, I noticed that basically the entire area that she lives in is getting freezing rain, except that she's in one area that's not. It was incredibly hilarious as I tried to explain that. She was like, whatever, it's not raining here. Not icy either. I'm like, okay. Then they got a little bit, and then before long it was raining. It worked out just fine. The other thing about forecast, I'm not covering your neighborhood for the most part, unless I'm saying your neighborhood forecast, pinpoint, or something marketable like that. Forecasts cover regions. They don't cover your neighborhood. They cover ranges, and they cover probabilities. Weather isn't a selfie, it's a wide angle shot. Think about it. We're doing this from above, kind of as a collective. That's what I was talking to my mother about. The other day, we were talking about her weather forecast. And I was saying because of where she lives, there's a bigger city where most of the television for the market where she lives in comes from. They're doing a global forecast taken from the pinpoint, from the viewpoint of 150 miles south. Well, that's not the same. They're different. So it's different probabilities. We also have a mountain range in the middle of all that. So you have to, if you're going to locally forecast in that type of environment, you have to take into account all of those things. I always say when I'm talking about Chief Meteorologist Mike Collier, or I'm talking about some of the other great meteorologists that I've worked with over the years, the thing that a really good meteorologist has, one that's been there for a long time, they have pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is your best friend, because if we've seen this same synoptic setup for multiple runs and we know the outcome differed from the modeling, Only the person who's been there for a period of time and kept notes knows that and knows what to expect. And eventually they just get it. They're like, hey, there's a model bias there, and this is how I usually account for it. And then they just do it. But a new person doesn't know that. So a seasoned meteorologist in the area is your best friend. Unfortunately, in small places, there's not enough money anymore to keep a meteorologist half the time, nor a seasoned one. Or if you're lucky, you got one that's old enough that they're willing to let their annual income continue to fall as the company continues to cut their pay because they enjoy doing it. That's pretty cool if you're that lucky. If not, a lot of places, even in weather places like Oklahoma, you'll have one television station in Tulsa doing it for multiple markets, or Oklahoma City. That is, they're not even doing local news in most states anymore outside of the big markets. Everything is via that bureau. That's people usually with an iPhone, and they take some pictures and they write a quick story about it from a desk and they call it a real story. So everything's shrinking. There's no money. So we're not getting actual forecasting in most cities. And most people don't know that because you're used to looking at an app. You flip open the app says 40% chance of rain. You're like, okay. Now, what do you hear when I say 40% chance of rain? Here's the way we know from most research. 30% zero. If I say there's a 30% chance of rain, in most people's mind, that equals zero. When it rains at 2 in the afternoon, you're like, he said it wasn't going to rain. Clearly, another dumb meteorologist. That's not what I said. If there's a 30% chance of rain, you took it as zero. Now, if I say there's a 70% chance of rain, typically the public takes that as a guarantee. I didn't guarantee that at all. If I said there's a 70% chance of rain, we might not even be talking about your neighborhood. If you live in the northwest portion of a coverage area, this might only impact the southeast portion of that coverage area, which is right back to that conversation. If it ain't my neighborhood, it's not happening. It's annoying when you live in an area that's the weather is for a large area and you wind up getting your game shut down for weather coverage, and that weather is an hour and a half to your southeast, and there's no chance you're going to get anywhere near it. That's plumb frustrating. I get that as a weather guy. I get it. I once called a television station because they had the logo so big, it was over Terry Bradshaw's face on the desk while they had the weather bumper up that said severe weather, and they were showing a radar. Over half of a 60-inch screen was their logo and the radar. You took out the heads of the people that were supposed to be the talent to put your logo in a way oversized radar. Of course I called. That's not even on the meteorologist. That's on master control, not paying attention and probably being understaffed, because most of the time in master control, you either have a 200-year-old person that's been there since no one really remembers when. He's probably retired twice and no one knew, so he just keeps coming back. Or you have a guy that people are scared of, and he just hangs around. He may sleep there in the parking lot. We don't know because they don't pay him anything. It's an unfair position. That's probably what happened. They just hit the wrong buttons and went right back to the nap they were taking or whatever. When we say things are going to happen and you and I as consumers run out and we go buy food and we charge up batteries and we make all these plans with babysitters because we may be missing work or school may be out or school is out, and so now I got to deal with that. That's a lot. So as a consumer, you feel entitled to be mad, like a lot of wasted effort happened on your part and you want to return the entire preparation thing like it was from Amazon and you can just take it back to Kohl's. I get it. Believe me, I get it. It's sort of insurance logic, right? I pay State Farm every year a lot of money, like a good neighbor, but ain't nothing happened, so they ain't been there. They're on one side, I'm on the other, right? So I was talking about weather apps earlier. Weather apps are okay. Again, it's global and it's not really for you. It's just sort of a brief overview. Basically, you can look at those, and if there's not rain on it, like a frontal boundary or something coming, it's a crapshoot. So you take it with a grain of salt, right? Yet when something goes wrong, you don't call the app, but you'll call the weatherman. That's interesting, right? If it's going to be sunny and 85, the app's probably going to be close to that. But when we get into things like Like, let's say you're living over on the West Coast. You get up around San Francisco and those areas. Bunch of microclimates up there. Apps have no idea how to work with that. And if you've ever been in that part of the country, it is absolutely normal to be at the Golden Gate Bridge and it's 46 degrees. If you can get into town a little ways, it's up to 62 because they've had the sun. That's common. A lot of microclimates around that part of California. What does the Gulf do? Well, if you live right along the Gulf, your weather's going to be significantly different at times than the apps are going to pick up. If you're on the side of a mountain, there's local cold pockets there. There's upslope. There's a lot of things that you have to figure out with temperature layers as we move up in elevation. The apps can get the basic stuff. It's the big stuff where they lose it. Weather's gone through an interesting change because the television stations don't have the money to pay for it, and they're farming it out and trying to cut it, which is interesting. It's really the only product in their building that brings people to their website. They know that. News won't do it because by the time they get it, well, it's already old now, isn't it? So that's the difference. Weather is the local driver for all of that. So if you're in a smaller place, you're not getting that. Now, what's happening is the internet is creating opportunities for people like MCWX. If you don't follow it, I'm not trying to sell it, but I'm saying if you want to see how it's being done, MCWX. There's another one called Panhandle Weather. Those guys are doing incredible stuff. So now you're able to buy the same equipment that the television stations were using and still are using, exact same graphics. The whole system's the same. You can have it in your house. You can have it has sponsorship graphics. Everything's already built so that you can make money off of it too, and because you can't do this for free. And you can work with a team, and it's relatively low maintenance, meaning it's not broke a lot. So that's kind of neat. You don't have to have your own IT guys. You need to have somebody who can kind of figure out basic stuff. And that's what we're experimenting with. So hopefully there is some coverage for some of those smaller areas that aren't getting the coverage they need from globally or bigger city-based television stations. Hopefully that's coming for you. But it's neat to see that begin to expand. And what I was saying earlier, I'll never finish this complete thought, but I think from the communication standpoint, our language is a large portion of the problem. I don't think the general public, I don't think normal people like me and you get the difference between watches, warnings, advisories, ice storms, severe storms. I think we have a bunch of words that we throw together and it makes us feel smart. And then we explain it to you. Well, a watch means we have all of the ingredients. Yeah, but they're not all coming together. Now, we got a warning. That means we have things that are happening. See, all that's too much. It either is or it isn't. We've got to find a better way to say that. And I think watch is not a word we really use in common vernacular like they intended it here anymore. I think that's a communication problem that needs to be fixed between the National Weather Service and the population. They've never got that right. Primarily because they're weather nerds and because once stuff sticks in governmental speak, it just stays. It doesn't change. When we say watch, warning, advisory, and the like, people hear mixed signals, confusion, and so is it over or not, right? That's kind of where everybody's living. A lot of messages turn into no messages. What happens if it's everybody's responsibility at work? It's nobody's responsibility specific, therefore it's not getting done. The other thing I think happens is the frustration builds up because like this particular storm system we had model data was saying 10 to 20 inches for the area that I spent most of my time covering, which is around Tulsa. Now, the fact is that's not what happened. But I kept saying during this forecast, listen, there's warm air that's going to filter in here. We know that, and we know there's dry air in place to start with, and that's going to cut down totals. So I said, and I said this multiple times throughout the week, if this forecast busts and we do get too much warm and the sleet takes away the snow totals, it's still going to be somewhere around 4 to 6 inches, and likely it's going to be an inconvenience for multiple days because it's going to be super cold on the backside of the frontal boundary. Check. I feel like we're covered. Not everybody does that. Put the bust forecast in. Tell them what the bust is. Tell them, because this happens during tornado season all the time when you live in a Tulsa or a Joplin or even a St. Louis at times. Everything looks like the conditions are there. We put them under an advisory. Everybody's watching, and there's just nothing happening. And after you've done that 6 or 7 times, well, sure, people are like, you know what? Last time y'all said that was a bunch of bull. And you know what we got this time? More bull. So that's what happens. The other thing now I think that happens too is back in the day when there wasn't 100 apps around and there wasn't everyone who, every single person on the planet knows more about weather now than anyone else because they have an app. They didn't want to complain too much back in the day because I got a lot of college behind me that you didn't put in and your app didn't either. So you don't have the skills I have. But when you got a keyboard, all of a sudden you can get chat to help you construct a conversation. We can hide behind a keyboard and say a lot of things. Just like when I post and I put these podcasts up. You'd never say that to me in person, I promise you. But you think that it's okay because in this culture now, rudeness gets rewarded. Outrage gets shared. That's what TikTok is. So what we're finding on this weather event is the storm wasn't in the sky, it's in the comment section. Let's make sure we understand what a meteorologist does. What is a meteorologist's job? What do they actually do? They're in risk communication. They talk about a range of outcomes, right? They help you make decisions and support them. Should I go to my tornado shelter now? Or should I wait 10 minutes? That's what meteorologists do. It's for people that have families trying to protect their children. You also don't realize that it's not just what we do on TV. We often work with emergency managers for multiple cities. Think about this. If there's a game like the Tulsa Drillers, there's a meteorologist talking to the team about whether this weather is going to impact it, what time we need to call it. All of those things are happening in a weather-active area. Florida is doing the same thing. Any stadium in America has a meteorologist on call all the time, period. That's the way it works. And that call, if you're that guy, can come at 6 in the morning or 11:59 p.m., 12:45 a.m. because they got a concert series going on in there or something. You never know. So we do a lot for businesses. We do a lot for cities and administration. We are not predicting the weather. Do not get confused. Meteorologists are really not in the weather prediction business. We're in the managing consequences business. That's a fact. We give you a range of things that can happen and try to help you prepare for them. Does that make sense? In this conversation, we're no different than referees and officials that you don't like. The messenger becomes the target. And that's unfortunate. People don't argue with the storm. They argue with the person holding the microphone, right? I get that. And I also get the frustration. I'm not saying I'm against what you're saying. I'm saying, where can we fix the problem? Is it our forecasting technique or is it communication? Weather is unfortunately uncertain. Even with all the satellites and all the work and all the stuff we have going, we're pretty close, but we don't always hit them. And I think another thing that happens with television stations, and I've been around this for a long time, they realize that when the weather gets busy, so does their Facebook page, so do their ratings. So they're in no hurry to let that ship sail. If you explain that that warm nose can eat up and the sleet's going to eat up that snow total and you get too deep into that, they get lost, I think, and they glaze over. And so I think we have to find a way as people and as meteorologists to bite-sized chunk the weather similar to the way we get it when we're scrolling Facebook, TikTok, and the like. So I think it's communication maybe where we have the problem. And even as a consumer looking at the meteorologist's job, I think in my mind, I'm like, they're supposed to tell me what's going to happen. That's not really our job. Our job is to help you prepare for what might happen. That's the difference. I had 2 other topics I need to talk about. I guess we're going to put that down as a weather discussion. Thanks for spending time with me today. I'm at Bud Ford Comedy. You can also find, if you're into weather, at Bud Ford WX.